Hello everyone. The chapter which we are going to do today is absorption by roots, complete chapter in one shot. This is for ICSE, plant physiology, first chapter. Now I'll be taking up all the chapters one by one, in which in one video I'll be covering the whole chapter in one shot, and then we'll be taking up questions and so on and so forth. Plus, the topic wise videos which I have already made, I will be giving the description of those videos, the link of those videos in the description. So, if you want to watch it topic wise, you can go to those videos and see. If you want to see it in one shot, you can see. So, we are going to start without wasting time. So, let's start. Herein, the chapter is absorption by roots. We all know that in each and every chapter for ICSE, definitions and the pointers become very important. So same goes here also. We are starting up with definitions one after the other. I have summed up all the definitions of the chapter. So I'll be telling you the definition and I'll be explaining you the same, and then we'll take up all the topics. Starting up with the first one, that is imbibition. Now imbibition, if I tell you what is imbibition is basically the process by which the living and the dead cells. Now herein the important thing is that the living and the dead parts of the plant cells, they absorb water by the process of surface attraction. That means the dead cells can also absorb water, but they should be plant cells, fine. So the phenomena by which the living and the dead plant cells, they absorb water is called imbibition. Example for that, a very common example is wherein the in raining season the doors, they swell up. Fine, you must have seen that the doors, we are unable to close the doors properly because in the rainy season the dead cells of the wood, they absorb water and hence does not allow the doors to close. So this is a very common example. Think of one more example by yourself. Then is diffusion, the second definition. Now the free movement of the molecules from the substances wherein from higher concentration to lower concentration. If I may just tell you, like for example, suppose we have a container here, and in this container, suppose I am keeping some blue color dye here, and this is filled with water. Ya fir a simple example is, if I put ink in water, what will happen? And stir it. So the ink molecules will spread throughout the water and the water will turn blue. Why will the water turn blue? Because the molecules which were in higher concentration of the ink, they have spread, freely moved in the parts wherein the molecules were, the other dye molecules were less. Fine. So free movement. Herein we are not talking about any semi-permeable membrane. We are not talking about any other membrane. We are talking about the free movement of the molecules. Now this diffusion, it can take place in gases, it can take place in water, it can take place in solids as well. Fine. So diffusion is wherein the molecules are in direct contact. They don't need a medium in between. Now example, I have already given you example. There is one ink example in the milk, or a very common example which we see in our houses also is then when you burn essence sticks, or like for example, if you spray a room freshener in one corner of the room, so pura room will have that smell, that fragrance. Why? Because due to diffusion, the molecules of that perfume, they have spread throughout the room. So this is diffusion. Then is osmosis. The next definition is osmosis, a very important definition, very important. This definition has further bifurcations. Here we'll just talk about definition, and then I'll explain you about hyper and isotonic solutions also, but later. So osmosis, it is the movement of the water molecules from the region of their higher concentration. That means higher concentration of water we are talking about, to their lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. If you do not write through a semi-permeable membrane, your answer goes wrong, because a semi-permeable membrane is very important for the movement of water. Like for example, suppose this is a semi-permeable membrane. In this side, suppose we have sugar solution. On the other side, suppose we have water. Fine. So now what does osmosis say? That wherever, now herein if it's only water, the concentration of water is more here. If it is sugar solution, the concentration of water would be less. So osmosis says that water moves from its higher concentration to its lower concentration but through a semi-permeable membrane. Now here children, they get confused. They write that the water moves from high to low concentration. They don't write of water. So when I say from high to low concentration, it becomes diffusion. Fine. So osmosis बनाने के लिए we have to specify that we are just talking about the movement of water molecules only. So the movement of water molecules from the region of their higher concentration to the region of their lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane is known as osmosis. The next definition which we have here is osmotic pressure. Now when we talk about osmosis, we must know what is osmotic pressure. अगर एक simple सी language में बताऊँ तो osmosis के वजह से जो pressure create होता है, we call it osmotic pressure. So the minimum pressure that must be exerted to prevent the passage of the solvent molecule in the solution when two are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. Let's simplify it. इसको थोड़ा सा simplify करते हैं. ये क्या बोल रहा है? Like for example, if this is a container, इसके बीच में यहाँ देर इज अ सेमी परमेबल मेम्ब्रेन. फाइन. यहाँ पे वी हैव वाटर ऑल्सो, वी हैव solute molecules also. That means if suppose sugar is dissolved in it, or suppose maybe salt is dissolved in it, so there are solute molecules also. So to prevent the excessive passage, as in at one point of time the level has to be balanced. जब यहाँ पे और यहाँ पे the amount of water will be equal, then the osmosis it has to stop. So minimum pressure that must be exerted so that the passage of the solvent into the solution when to matlab the passage through a semi-permeable, the pressure which is required for the passage through a semi-permeable membrane and to prevent the passage through a semi-permeable membrane whenever not required is known as osmotic pressure. अगर एक बहुत simple सी language, so it is the pressure which is exerted by osmosis. And what is osmosis? When the water molecules move from high to low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. Achha, herein, bache, I just want to tell you one thing. You have definitions which are given in your book. When I say definitions, suppose a definition is asked in 1 mark, they are expecting you to write the same definition which you have in your book. So try not to modify the definition on your own. If you are writing a I am not talking about write a note, I am not talking about explanation, but I am specifically talking about the definitions here. So if they are asking you to write a definition, please stick to the definition which you have in your book. Then we have root pressure. The pressure which is developed into the roots. Now what is the purpose or what is the function of roots? To absorb water. So if a root, suppose this is the membrane of a root, so pressure which is exerted by the inflow of the water inside the root to push the sap upward is known as root pressure. Ab roots they absorb water and the water that tends to move up in the stem. Fine. So जो roots पानी absorb करते हैं, वो जो पानी pressure create करता है जिससे कि water tends to move up on the cell sap is known as root pressure. So what is it? The pressure due to the inflow of water is known as root pressure. Then we have guttation. The removal of water in the form of water droplets from the margins of the leaves. Now we have heard about transpiration. We know about transpiration, but there are certain other terms like guttation and then bleeding. So when I say guttation is like, for example, suppose this is a leaf. If I make a leaf here, so in the morning if you visit a garden and you observe the leaves carefully, you will see that water droplets are there on the margins of the leaves. These are not dewdrops. These water droplets are the excessive water which has been pushed out from the leaf. And the openings which are present at the margin of the leaf are known as hydatodes. I must have written, no, I have not written. So it is hydatodes, Hydatodes. So hydatodes are the opening through which water tends to move in the form of water droplets, not vapors, from the margins of the leaves. It occurs due to root pressure, क्योंकि root absorb करती रहती है पानी, ऊपर भेजती रहती है पानी. अब जो excessive पानी है that goes out from the leaves. So that is guttation. There is active transport. Now in diffusion and in osmosis we have seen that the molecules they move from high to low concentration. But अगर उल्टा हो जाए, so when the molecules move from, I have underlined this also, from low to high concentration using energy. Of course, it is movement, it is a downward movement, as in ऑपोजिट मूवमेंट. अगर आपको स्टेयर्स नीचे उतरनी है तो इतना एनर्जी नहीं लगती. अगर आपको वही स्टेयर्स क्लाइंब करके ऊपर जाना है, सो यू नीड एनर्जी फॉर दैट. सो व्हेन द कंसंट्रेशन इज फ्रॉम लो टू हाई, energy is required for that transportation, so that is known as active transport. So movement from low to high concentration. During the process, movement occurs against concentration, low to high. That is why it requires energy for this process. Of course, the energy which is provided, it is in the form of ATP by the plants. So this is how the active transport takes place. Then is turgor pressure. Now we have done root pressure. Then is turgor pressure, wall pressure. So these are actually four pressures: osmotic pressure, root pressure, turgor pressure, and wall pressure. All four are different. Osmotic pressure due to osmosis, root pressure due to the inflow of water inside the roots, turgor pressure, the pressure, like for example, if suppose this is a stem maybe, है ना? So when the water it tends to move in, and suppose this is roots, suppose we are talking about roots here. Just one second. Okay. So suppose this is roots. This is, I'm sorry, this is stuck. I don't know why. Here. Okay. Fine. So suppose the turgor pressure, it is the pressure which is basically when the water or the contents which are there in the root, they exert some pressure over the wall of the roots. That is known as root pressure. Fine. So that pressure which is put over the walls of the root via the cell content is known as turgor pressure. When I say wall pressure, so content तो बाहर walls पे pressure डाल रहा है, walls भी are putting pressure over the content, that is known as wall pressure. So the pressure which is put by the walls over the content is known as the wall pressure. Then we have the next definition, that is plasmolysis. Now what is plasmolysis? Plasmolysis, we have heard it in grade 9th also. When the plant cells they shrink is known as plasmolysis. When we talk about animal cells they shrink, we call it shrinkage. But when the plant cells they lose water, tend to lose water, we call it plasmolysis. We will be talking about plasmolysis and deplasmolysis when we will talk about the osmosis and the way the process of osmosis takes place and how things are. Okay, so plasmolysis is wherein the water moves out from the plant cell. Now we specify about plant cell here because when we talk about animal cell, it's just the shrinkage. उसको हम plasmolysis नहीं बोलते हैं. We call plasmolysis or we call it plasmolysis only in case of plant cell. So what happens here? This is due to osmosis. We will discuss it later, but अभी के लिए आप इतना याद रखो that the process which occurs in plant cells when they are placed in a concentrated solution and its cell content shrink is known as plasmolysis. Then is deplasmolysis, when a cell is already shrunk, plant cell, and we take it out, put it in water, it will swell again. Reversal of plasmolysis is known as deplasmolysis. Then we have bleeding, as I told you, guttation. In the same manner, plants they lose water in the form of bleeding also, wherein the plants they tend to, like for example, if there is a part cut, आप काट दो थोड़ा सा plant को, so some solution or some sap it comes out, that is known as bleeding. So these are all the definitions from the chapter. There is no other definition from it. So you can club these definitions and then you can learn them. So I am just repeating once again: imbibition, diffusion, osmosis, osmotic pressure, root pressure, guttation, active transport, turgor pressure, wall pressure, plasmolysis, deplasmolysis, and bleeding. Now next is tonicity, a very important topic which is related to osmosis. As I told you, I'll be explaining you osmosis after this. after the definitions which we do. So here we are talking about the explanation of osmosis. Let's understand first of all what is tonicity. Fine. So tonicity basically is the concentration gradient. That means the solution, whether it is hypertonic or it is hypotonic. Fine. So tonicity basically would be the change in the concentration gradient. So we have three terms here. Let's see those three terms. One is hypotonic solution. Second is hypertonic solution. Then we have isotonic solution. These are three solutions. Hypotonic solution, you can learn it like this. This is something very easy which I tell my children to learn. Hypotonic solution is a solution wherein concentration of the solution is less. That means water present in the solution is more. Hypertonic solution is the one which is more concentrated. So herein the amount of water level is less. Isotonic, wherein the concentration is same on both sides, same on both sides. So if you learn it like this, hypotonic solution, a solution which we call a less concentrated solution, like dilute concentrate, like dilute HCl है या फिर water है, that is a hypotonic solution. When I say hypertonic solution, wherein the concentration is more, water amount is less, but the solute amount of dissolved, like for example, if it's a sugar syrup में sugar भी dissolved है, so water का content is less and sugar content is more. We call it a hypertonic solution. Hypotonic solution will be plain water, wherein there is no sugar, so it just has water. So that's a hypotonic solution. Now, when a cell placed, I'll just write it here only, then we'll explain. When a cell placed in a hypotonic solution will always swell up, always swell up. When a cell placed in a hypertonic solution, it will always shrink. The term which we were discussing, that shrinkage in plant cell is known as plasmolysis. So, whenever you place a plant cell in concentrated like sugar syrup, so it will shrink. That we call it as plasmolysis. And in isotonic solution, there is no change. I'll explain you with the help of a diagram also. We have a diagram here. First, I'll repeat once again whatever we've discussed. So, here we are discussing the concept of osmosis first of all. As osmosis says that water content always moves from its high concentration to its low concentration. So there are certain changes which occur when this movement has to take place. Fine. So there are three situations which we have discussed. A condition wherein, suppose there are three conditions. A solution wherein the water content is more, a solution wherein the water content is less, a solution wherein it is equal. So when it is more, we call the solution as hypotonic. Where it is less, we call it hypertonic. Where it is more equal, we call it isotonic. Suppose I keep a cell here. This cell will swell up. Why will it swell up? You think? I'll answer. So why it swell up? Because it's a hypotonic solution. Hypotonic solution has water, more of water. So water tends to move from high to low concentration. जब बाहर ज़्यादा concentration है पानी का, it tends to move inside the cell, leading to the swelling up of the cell. And same happens here when the cell is placed here, but bahar pani ka concentration is less, so cell tends to give out water and leads to shrinkage. Isotonic solution, both the sides same type of solution is there, and hence there is no change will take place here. So let's see once again. Herein I have three pictures. First you also identify with me and then write. And then we'll be answering. I'll just give you 1, 2, 3. It's easy to see. Let's see. Herein water is there and there are red particles, and then there is a cell present. यहाँ पे cell का size is normal, यहाँ पे cell का size is small, and here the cell size is large. That means the cell has shown no change here. The cell has shrunk here. And the cell has swollen up here. The cell is swelling up here. Fine. So that means this type of a solution, the arrows are also showing the same thing. Fine. So this type of solution is an isotonic solution. This solution is a, you tell me, hypertonic solution, and this solution is a hypotonic solution. Fine. So a hypotonic solution, and you can see यहाँ पे red particles बहुत कम है. More of water is there. Fine. So hypotonic solution is wherein the water tends to move in the cell. Hypertonic solution is where the water tends to move out of the cell. Isotonic solution is the one wherein no change takes place. That means equal change, both are coming in and out. So there is no specific change in the cell. Tonicity, a very important topic. Question comes from this topic for sure. 1 mark में, 2 mark में, because your paper pattern has changed. We will discuss the paper pattern also, and so in that we will discuss it in detail. Next is the reasoning questions related to the above topics. Now we have done topic hypotonic solution, लेकिन ऐसे कोई पूछता नहीं है what happens to the cell when placed in. बहुत कम होता है that they ask you this, but they can give you reasoning questions for this. I've given 3 here. You also simultaneously try to search the answers for them or look for the answers. I am giving you the answers here. I'll read out the question for you. If you sprinkle common salt over lawn grass, it gets killed. Why? Let's understand the explanation. Suppose we have lawn grass here, and over this lawn grass I put salt. So this salt, what will it do? It will make the surrounding of the lawn grass hypertonic, because वहाँ तो पानी था, अब हमने salt डाल दिया. So when the salt is added, the soil around the lawn grass becomes hypertonic. And what happens in a hypertonic condition? The cell tends to lose water. So the lawn grass will tend to give out water, hence will shrink, hence will lead to the death of the lawn grass. Second condition, a cell when kept in hypertonic solution shrinks. The same answer. When a cell is placed in a hypertonic solution, it tends to lose water. Plants often wilt when too much fertilizer is added to it. Like for example, suppose this is a plant and you add too much of fertilizer to it. What will happen? What will happen? The fertilizer will make the solution around or the condition around hypertonic. Hence the plant cells will tend to lose water, and hence when it will lose water, the cells will shrink and the plant will die. So there are multiple reasoning questions like this. Again, we will be taking up more of these questions in our upcoming videos. So stay tuned in. Next is our experiment. So we have done definitions, we have done tonicity, a very important topic, and now we are going to talk about the experiments. Now please remember that when we are talking about plant physiology, इसमें से experiment आना is must, as in you will for sure get experimental questions. So let's see, there are 3 experiments in this chapter, so we'll take up all the experiments one by one. Okay, so we are going to start with the first experiment. The first experiment says, as you can see in the picture, there are 2 test tubes. One has oil over it, both have oil over it. One has plant inside it and the other does not have a plant. So what is the aim for this experiment is to prove that the roots absorb water. So water is absorbed by roots. What do we want to prove? How do we prove it? So when in a test tube we place this plant and we put oil over it. Why is this oil placed over it? So that no water is lost by transpiration. If you get this experiment, तो ये question जरूर पूछेंगे. I'll just write it here. Purpose of oil. Purpose of oil in this test tube, and the answer would be to avoid evaporation. So that we know that all the water which has been, the level of the water which comes out, all the water has been absorbed by the roots, और कोई भी water जो है वो evaporates नहीं हुआ है. So what do we see here, that after some time the level of water in the test tube will fall. In container P, level of water will fall down, whereas in container Q the level of water will remain same. Fine. Why? Because herein in container P there is a plant present which is absorbing water. In container Q there is no plant, so there is no absorption. So Q is just a control to show that only the roots they are absorbing water. Oil is placed on both to show that no water has moved out of the test tube apart from being absorbed by the roots. So no one will ask you to write the whole experiment. They will give you this picture and they will ask you questions. Now maybe if I'll make a question out of it, I'll give this picture, and then suppose the first question I'll give is what do you observe in this experiment? 2. Why is oil placed over both the test tubes? 3. What is the purpose of container Q? So the answer for this is, it's just a control to see that the clear result is shown in container P. Next question, why or what is the result which we get in container P? The level of the water comes down. 4. How do you explain that the level of the water has come down? Fine. So these are certain questions which you can be asked from this. If you know the experiment, you can answer any question. So our next experiment, second experiment from the same chapter is, wherein we talk about, now these are 2 experiments actually, this is first and the second experiment. The first one is to prove that phloem is important for plant, and second experiment is to show that xylem is important for the plant. या फिर we can ask like this, that in this we are showing that phloem is responsible or is important for the conduction of food, and in the other one we can say that how to prove that xylem is important for the conduction of water in the plant. So what do we do here in setup 1? Suppose we write it setup 1 and this is setup 2. In setup 1, as you clearly see that xylem is there but phloem is removed. Fine. So phloem part is removed here. So when phloem is removed, what is going to happen? Food will not be conducted because phloem is responsible for conducting food. So leaves, they have made the food, it goes down, but यहाँ से नीचे नहीं जाता है food. So this, the roots don't get food. When the roots, they don't get food, plant dies. Of course, कुछ time तक पानी absorb करेगा and then it will die. Next setup is, if you see here, यहाँ से center से xylem has been removed. Here, this blue shaded part, that is the xylem which has been removed, and phloem we see here. Fine. So herein, what has happened? Xylem is removed. So xylem is removed. What happens here? Roots, they absorb water, but यहाँ से ऊपर नहीं जाता है पानी. So these leaves, they don't get water. When the leaves, they don't get water, no food is prepared. No food prepared, and hence plant dies. Fine. So these 2 experiments, 1 and 2, setup 1 proves that xylem helps in conduction of water. Setup 2 proves that setup 1 proves that phloem helps in conduction of food. Setup 2 proves that xylem helps in conduction of water. Again, no one is going to ask you to write the whole experiment. They will give you this picture, one or the other, koi bhi ek, and then they will ask you questions. Why phloem part is removed? What do you observe here? Why will the plant die? So these type of questions. So this is experiment number 2 of the chapter. Now we have experiment number 3 from the same chapter. This experiment is to prove or to show that xylem conducts water. How do we? Very, very simple. This you can do at your homes also. Now what is done? We take a stick. You can take a flower stick, koi sa bhi, rose ka stick le lo, and keep it in a take a glass, put some color in it, maybe ink, or you can put potassium permanganate या फिर कोई red color जो color change कर दे water का, and then place that stick in it. Now after a day, what do you do when you remove that stick and cut it and see it under microscope? You will see that the xylem portion, as you can see in this figure, the xylem portion has turned red. So this shows that xylem is responsible for conduction. And अगर आप उसको वैसे भी करना चाहते हो, स्टेम को जब आप कट करोगे तो सेंटर का पार्ट है वो जनरली वाइट होता है और यहाँ पे रेड होगा. या फिर अगर आप एक वाइट फ्लावर लेके उसको रखते हो तो वाइट फ्लावर विल टर्न पिंकिश रेड या ब्लूइश रेड, जो भी कलर होगा. तो दैट्स अ वेरी ब्यूटीफुल एक्सपेरिमेंट टू सी. So this is how we prove that xylem conducts water. Again, no one will ask you to write the experiment. ये picture दिया होएगा and then you will have to answer the questions. So this is experiment number 3. So we are done with definitions. We are done with tonicity. We are done with the experiments, 3 experiments. Now we are going to do uses of turgidity in the plant. Roots, they absorb water, and that water is very important for providing turgidity to the plant. When I say turgidity to the plant, plants they don't have skeletal system. So there is that water filled inside the plant which gives it a proper shape. Turgidity ka matlab hai stiffness. So that stiffness to the plant is provided by the water which is being absorbed by the roots. So what are the uses of that turgidity? One, as you see, the germinating seeds. The germinating seeds, they germinate. इसका बहुत simple, you can do it at your home also. Take a few gram seeds, put it in water overnight, 2-3 दिन रखो, you will see that they will germinate. So that water which is there inside the seed, that tends to break the seed coat, and hence the plant, it starts, plumulin radicle tends to move out in the out and germination starts. Next is, it helps to provide root pressure. Root pressure we've already discussed. The water which moves inside the roots, it provides the pressure for the ascent of the sap. अगर root pressure ही नहीं होगा तो leaves तक पानी नहीं पहुंचेगा, because that root pressure is generated by the water which is absorbed by the roots. Hence it is very important. Next we have the importance of turgidity is the opening and closing of stomata. Very important. The guard cells which are there in the stomata, they tend to take in water and swell up so that the stomata open and respiration takes place and photosynthesis also take place. And when the guard cells they lose water, the stomata they close. So that turgidity which is there due to the movement of water inside is known as, or is responsible for opening and closing of stomata as well. Also some of the turgor movements. Turgor movement. What are turgor movements? In our upcoming chapters, we'll be talking about tropic movements, as in, एक simple सा example बताऊँ तो touch me not plant. When you touch the leaves, they curl up. So that wilting takes place due to the movement of the water outside. The leaves they tend to wilt, ड्रूप हो जाती हैं जब, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल एक आपने प्लांट धूप में रख दिया, फाइन, और आप उसको धूप में छोड़ दो, पानी नहीं दो, तो वो ऐसे मुरझा जाएगा. सो वो मुरझा क्यों जाएगा? क्योंकि पानी विल ऑल गो आउट ड्यू टू ट्रांसपिरेशन. सो दैट टर्गर मूवमेंट विच इज टेकिंग प्लेस इन द प्लांट्स, दैट इज ऑल्सो वन ऑफ द फंक्शंस of water which is being absorbed by the roots. So first of all, what is turgidity? Turgidity is very important for the plants to keep it stiff, and that stiffness is provided by the water which is absorbed by the roots. So it helps in germination, it helps in providing a root pressure, opening and closing of stomata, also the turgor movements. So this is why we call it more of the process of absorption of water becomes more important. Next is the forces which are contributing to ascent of sap. पहली बात, what is ascent of sap? Ascent of sap, if I may show you here, suppose this is a plant, these are roots, fine. Now roots are absorbing water, that absorbed water by root pressure tends to move out. This movement of water upside is known as ascent of sap. What is sap? The fluid which is present inside the plant. आप कोई भी plant की twig को snap करो, उसमें से कुछ पानी निकलता है. That's known as sap. So ascent of sap is the conduction of the water upwards. So the forces contributing to it is root pressure, capillarity, and transpiration pull. Let's write them. Root pressure, capillarity, and transpirational pull. So what is root pressure? I already told you, the pressure which is conducted or generated by the inflow of the water. ये जो पानी रूट्स में अंदर जा रहा है, ये जो प्रेशर डेवलप कर रहा है रूट्स के अंदर, वी कॉल इट रूट प्रेशर. देन इज कैपिलैरिटी. कैपिलैरिटी का मतलब, व्हाट इज कैपिलैरिटी? कैपिलैरिटी जनरली, एक कैपिलरी इज अ ट्यूब, यू विल सी इट इन योर केमिस्ट्री लैब. सो उसमें से ऐसे जब पानी को सक करते हैं तो पानी ऐसे ऊपर जाता है. सो कैपिलैरिटी इज, अगर हम इस स्टेम को देखें तो इस स्टेम में जब पानी यहाँ से ऐसे ऊपर जा रहा है तो एक बड़े छोटे जाइलम की ट्यूब के अंदर जा रहा है, वी कॉल इट कैपिलैरिटी. देन इज ट्रांसपिरेशनल पुल. व्हाट इज ट्रांसपिरेशनल पुल? ये जो लीव्स हैं ये कंटिन्यूअस दे आर गिविंग आउट वाटर, और जिससे एक सक्शन पुल क्रिएट हो रहा है. अब जैसे यहाँ से रूट्स पानी एब्जॉर्ब कर रही हैं, स्टेम से पानी ऊपर जा रहा है, लीव्स वो पानी बाहर दे रही हैं, तो यहाँ पे तो वैक्यूम क्रिएट हो गया ना. अगर लीव्स पानी बाहर देते रहेंगे और रूट्स एब्जॉर्ब नहीं करेंगे तो प्लांट विल डाई. सो दैट ट्रांसपिरेशनल पुल इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर कंडक्शन ऑफ वाटर अपवर्ड्स, दैट इज एसेंट ऑफ सैप. अगर ट्रांसपिरेशनल पुल नहीं हो तो पानी ऊपर जो बड़े बड़े ट्रीज हैं उनमें नहीं जा सकता. लॉन्ग जो टॉल ट्रीज हैं उनके अंदर वाटर इट मूव्स अप ड्यू टू ट्रांसपिरेशनल पुल. हियर आई जस्ट वांट टू टेल यू दैट इन शॉर्ट प्लांट्स or in herbs and shrubs, water tends to move up by root pressure. But in tall plants, water tends to move up by transpirational pull. Plus, during night, root pressure is responsible for conduction of water. During day, transpirational pull is responsible for conduction of water. So, these are the forces which contribute to the ascent of sap, or the condition wherein the water has to move upward in the plant. Herein we have completed the whole chapter. I have covered all the topics of the chapter one after the other. In the same manner, next in upcoming video, I am going to take up the next chapter, that is transpiration, and we will do the whole chapter transpiration in one shot in the same manner, and then one after the other I'll take up all the chapters one by one. We will be taking up question series also. जैसे अब मैं one shot videos बना रही हूँ for chapters, ऐसे ही question series हम लेंगे. So please share it with your friends. We are going to increase the subscriber base also. Please आप अपने share अपने friends के साथ, जो आप मेरे पुराने subscribers हैं, please अपने juniors के साथ इसको share करो, so that they can also be benefited. Soon मैंने live sessions शुरू करने हैं for grade 10th and 11th. 10th ICSE and CBSE अलग अलग सेशन, एंड देन 11th जिसमें दोनों ही कवर होगा. सो those sessions will cover the paper patterns, questions कैसे आते हैं, हमें कैसे तैयारी करनी है. So you can please share the channel as much as possible and please help me grow. So thank you so much. Please keep liking, sharing and subscribing.